I've spent my life delving into what it all means.
How do we still seek purpose?
That very question is what it's all about.
We wander, eyes closed to the dark.
Society depends on this.
The world has just become so inhuman. Why is it so insensitive? Why is it so selfish?
Tell me true, my heart.
I'm not gonna be what I've turned into anymore.
At the heart of human interaction is the agreement that we're all going to fabricate.
I am so lonely. I crave interaction. I crave it.
I've been decent, honest, loyal. I've worked hard.
It's okay. I know someday I'm
And will it be all right if I still adore you?
It's okay. I know someday I'm gonna be with you. It's okay. I know someday I'm gonna be with you. It's okay.
Do we abandon the search for truths? Or is all this finally and forever pointless?
Tim, I want to start off by asking you about the process of finding this story. If you approached it thematically, or if the characters came to you first, because it's a group of characters that are wrapped in very serious themes and they're interlocking, but it is one story concerning those themes. So where did the process start for you?
I love that question. It started, as all my scripts do, with character. I come at narrative as a writer, initially as an actor, and so I like writing characters into situations that I know will be interesting to play. And in this case, it started with a guy witnessing an act of violence through an apartment intercom. I didn't even know that Sam's character, Walter Zero, was going to become the film's main character. I thought actually it was going to be Corey Stoll's character, but then I just began to fall in love with Sam's character and knew that he was going to center the movie. And then once Sam came on board to act in the film, that was even more the right choice.
When Sam came on board and he became the central character, is that when you sort of started finding this central character as a kind of Greek chorus for the themes that were happening for all the other characters?
Yeah, and I have always wanted to write a movie about New York City, and living in New York City. And having grown up in Oklahoma and then spent 4 years in New England at college, I didn't get here until 1986, which is a long time ago, I understand. But I was very much rooted in where I'd come from, not in where I'd arrived. And so it felt like I had to get to the point where I'd spent the majority of my life here until I was able to write a real New York film. And finally, this was it. And the themes address what it's like to live here now in an age where the questions that the film asks about how to live a good life, is there a purpose to life, and what is a healthy life, that seem more and more to be cast aside and ignored. Those become the focus of the film, and Sam's character is a great conduit for asking those questions.
not only a conduit, but on a superficial level, forgive me, you are also in many ways a great symbol of New York at this point, from all the years that you were on Law & Order, and you're also just an inhabitant of New York, and you do stage a lot. So did it feel for you as the central character of a sort of quintessential New York story that you were playing off a little bit of a public persona that you may or may not have in your own
I
opinion?
don't know, but I love it that you are making an identity between me and New York. I love it.
I mean, come on, Law & Order, so many years. This is Mr. New York right here.
Well, one of my favorite things in the years that we were shooting it would be walking down the street and somebody randomly would shout across the street, "Hey, Law and Order!" It just makes your day. It's such a lift.
So when you get the script and you see that you're the central character and you're going to have, you're not just going to be the central character, but also the chorus for a lot of the other characters in the movie, and this sort of dense philosophical dialogue, as an actor, does that challenge, worry you, or does that excite you to get into a project?
Tim just said he started to love my character. I loved it from the minute I started reading it. I loved his centeredness. I loved his clarity of thinking. I loved his clear-eyed and I think courageous looking at life as he understood it to be, without shrinking. I loved him.
I would agree. One of the things that I loved about him was that it's someone who knows that life in many ways in itself is despair, but there are moments of beauty and hope within it that you find through that clear-headedness. Maybe I misread it.
He says a very telling thing when he's walking down the street with his wife. He says, all the philosophers I've studied and admired have a completely different take on reality than my own experience tells me to have. Because he was a happily married man, devoted to his family, and very happy in his work. And I don't think that the movie makes a comfortable synthesis out of those two questions about the well, you'll have to apply the right word to the philosophy. It's not nihilism, but it's
existential. I mean, the thinkers with whom he concerns himself, at least in the course, are existential thinkers. But in studying existentialism, I feel like he's reached all the way back to the Greeks as a foundational approach.
How so, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, because the question he's living, or the questions he's asking, really concern themselves with the basics. That final lecture where he's saying, how do we still seek purpose? And where do we hope to find it if we're so busy convincing ourselves there needn't be any? Those are as basic as the questions that Socrates and Plato were asking, and Epicurus as well. So I think that it goes back a lot further than existential philosophy, and addresses how do we live our lives in the most basic terms.
Who said I'd rather be an unhappy philosopher than a happy pig?
Oh, I'm not sure who said that.
I thought it was attributed to Socrates, but
do you agree with
would
that?
know if that were true.
That would make sense coming out of his mouth.
But I've always said that I thought it omitted a third possibility, which would be to be a happy philosopher.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's Walter a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, your character's the happy philosopher here.
Yes, even though his philosophy is pretty bleak.
How did you go about casting the rest of the characters in the film? You've got Corey Stoll, you've got Gretchen Mol, you've got Kristen Stewart. I mean, when the movie was starting for me, it was just a constant, oh my God, what? This person? It's just going and going and going. How did you go about casting this?
I try to write roles that actors are going to want to play. And I like to think that I have the reputation for giving actors a good experience when they do my films. I also am blessed, since I act in a lot of movies, I get to know a lot of people. And so many of these actors I'd either worked with in the past or had encountered in the past at various events and screenings.
What's a good experience on one of your films versus a bad experience that you may have had on a film that you've acted in? No, no names or scenarios. But it doesn't have to be scenario specific. But
yeah, that's interesting. Because the dialogue is often so dense, and I hope you all will see this movie, and you'll immediately recognize that the characters are very articulate, and that's intentional, because I think that if we're going to obsess over seeing beautiful people in films, why can't we obsess over seeing really smart people in films? And that's the kind of character I like to write. I don't think it's elitist. I think it's something we can all aspire to, and I include myself in that. But when I write dense language, I make an agreement with myself on behalf of the actors that I'm not going to change lines on the spot. And often in films, I play, as an actor, some very loquacious characters with long speeches. And I've gotten onto a set having memorized a large piece of text. And then
Just right here in the middle, would you please change thus to that?
Yeah, little tense changes and changing a preposition and let's put a period here, but not just a couple. I might have given you one or two of those, but I'm talking about a sort of carpet bombing approach where an entire monologue is just changed in all sorts of little ways, and then, as an actor, you're expected to deliver. Don't complain, don't explain. And so I try not to do that to actors. And I also like for actors on the sets when I'm directing to feel like they're being encouraged and that everything is an opportunity, as opposed to them being admonished and everything is a test. And that can often be the case in film and television when you don't have a lot of time. The director is often not coming from an acting background, but from an editorial background or a writing background or a photography background. And they just want to tell you what not to do. And it can be inhibiting. And it can shut down creativity. I like to try and do the opposite.
you have Kristen Stewart giving a really incredible raw performance in this movie. I was happy to see her. I've always been a fan of her work before even the Twilight movies. I remember the Sean Penn film that she did a while back with Emil Hirsch. I thought she was fantastic in that. But I haven't seen her do anything like this. It's incredible to have this coming out around the same time as Clouds of Sils Maria, which is another brilliant performance by her. How did you know that you could get this out of her? What had you seen her in that you knew she was up to par for this?
Well, I'd seen her in the David Fincher movie, and thought she was extraordinary in
Panic
that.
Room,
Yeah,
right?
Panic Room. And then I met her. I met her because of another film, and I took an immediate liking to her. She is disarmingly blue collar, in the most riveting way you can imagine. This girl who played this icon of teenage sexuality is ultimately, she's a worker. She's got an incredibly strong work ethic. She comes from a crew background in movies, and so she gets what the apparatus of filmmaking is, and her work ethic proves that on a daily basis. This is a movie, and I hats off to Sam as well. We hear all about, and we experience what are called actor perks, and a single trailer with the pop out, and
Nice.
there are some There are some actors I've worked with who have 4 trailers on a set. One for the chef, one for the personal makeup, their trailer, and then a trailer for the assistant. And then a parquet, I'm not joking, a parquet courtyard with cafe tables in the middle of it.
I don't think you're joking. I'm just imagining, my head is playing the actors who it could potentially be.
I'm trying to figure out how I could get that.
Yeah.
What Nicolas Cage movie did Tim Blake Nelson do?
But on this movie, we didn't even have really our own private dressing rooms. It was dressing areas with curtains and chairs, cordoning off specific tiny areas, no private bathroom. We were in church basements, and he never complained. Kristen never complained. There was what's called an equity cot. That was the only place that you could lie down during 12-hour days. It's still a movie set, so what do you have to complain about?
What about hardship?
So I don't mean to sound like a jackass, but
Not at all. You're just talking about the difference between doing something for the love of the writing and for the love of the job itself.
yeah, and specifically about Kristen, that she just does not put on airs. She absolutely is who she is, and she's that way in an unembarrassed fashion. She's an astonishing person, and the performance is incredibly generous and heartfelt.
And Sam, you got to have a scene with her. You got to have a scene with Glenn Close. You got to have a scene with Tim. Was that an attraction for you going into this movie, that you were going to get to have these great scenes with really powerful actors and actresses?
Oh, sure. And the thing about Kristen is that this workman-like persona that you were talking about comes into the room, does the rehearsal, and then she just, without any kind of technical preparation that I could see, she just hurled herself at it. Yeah. And without embarrassment, if something didn't work, she just hurled herself at it again. And if it started to cook, she just kept on. I've never seen anybody so, put down your pencil, get up, and go. It was wonderful fun to be in the room with.
Yeah, it's appropriate for the character, and again, you'll see is when you see the movie, it was like a live electrical wire in the room.
Yeah, absolutely. Your wife in this is played by Glenn Close, and it's once again a silly thing to say, but like watching the two of you as a husband and wife walk down the street. When that started, I was like, oh, that is the couple that I want to spend my time with in New York City. That is like the most beautiful elderly couple possible to spend time with in New York City. Sam Waterston and Glenn Close. Did you know Glenn Close going into this? I mean, she's also another sort of quintessential New Yorker, I feel like.
Yeah, we did a play together called Benefactors years and years ago, and we've been friends ever since. And I thought it was wonderful of her to do this, and I don't know whether you would characterize it this way, but a sense that I get is that that Tim likes actors who don't do a lot of acting, who just occupy the place of the part and live there. And I thought Glenn just did that to a fairly well in this.
I completely agree with you. I mean, you talk about Kristen Stewart hurling herself, but it doesn't feel showy in any way. It feels organic, for lack of a better word.
And there was precious little harvesting. The movie is challenging and disturbing, and it doesn't resolve itself in a comfortable way. And neither do the scenes. People don't say, okay, now you love me, now I'm going to take my bow kind of here. There's none of that in the movie.
Did you have any, I mean, for the troubles or the challenges that he spoke about, did you have trouble getting it made? It's difficult to get a small indie film made these days.
Well, luckily this movie is contemporary, and it takes place in New York City, in the present, on locations that didn't have to be built. And a real blessing ended up being that because we had so little money, we couldn't carry around a big lighting package and lots of camera equipment. We were really making this almost as a guerrilla film with a tiny crew. And the reason I say this is a blessing is because the city ends up lighting itself. And I think it's as accurate a film about New York as I certainly could make, not only in the characters that we brought together, but also in showing New York as it really is, because we didn't Hollywood up New York. You see trash on the street, you see...
That has not been artfully placed.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
You didn't wet the streets behind everybody to give it that gloss.
No wet
or
downs,
anything.
and the lights that light the scenes are very often New York street lights. They're not our lights. And our wonderful director of photography, Christina Voros, shot the movie operating mostly herself, handheld. And the frames are found inside of scenes with her making adjustments with the actors, almost dancing with them. And I think that you get a real veracity as a result of that. Yeah, and so the low budget was our friend in that regard.
You embraced it.
Yeah.
Sam, I have to ask, a couple years ago when Inherent Vice came out, your daughter delivered an amazing performance, your daughter, Catherine Waterston, and she is skyrocketing right now. She's in the new Harry Potter. It's not the Harry Potter movie, but the J.K. Rowling movie. And she just got cast as...
One of three.
And she just got cast as Ripley.
One of two.
It's incredible.
Aliens. Yeah, she's got more jobs ahead of her than I've ever had in my life, is what I like to say.
That's the answer. That's all I wanted. Let's go to audience Q&A. Does anyone have any questions out here?
We can start with an online question. So Amanda would like to know, what would you say to an out-of-towner moving to New York in order to prepare them for city life?
Oh, be prepared for a really exciting experience. I think the city is in a very sweet moment, and it's an absolutely stupendous place. So be glad you're coming.
I would say have every experience within the limits of safety and the law, most laws anyway, that you can possibly have, and you might end up getting married and living here and raising a family. And I'm now raising 3 New Yorkers, which, having grown up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I never imagined I would do.
Do you see them being like young and neurotic, like more so than you when you're little, just like too smart for their own good?
They're a bit tortured. We have 3 boys, but none of them is particularly neurotic, thankfully. My wife is from Texas, so hopefully that influence pervades the house.
Next question.
Hi, gentlemen. So from the trailer itself, it looks very compelling and intense. So I was wondering, what did you carry away with you from being part of this film?
Well, it confirmed me in thinking that the things that I've been obsessed with as questions all my life were well worth carrying on investigating. I have a sort of argument with the film because I don't think I am an existentialist myself, but I think that the challenging question that it raises is it's ridiculous how little attention we pay to it. And so you were talking about this being a little movie. Well, it is a little movie, but it's got a great big subject inside it. I thought it was time well spent, and I've carried it with me since.
That central question that you said that we don't pay enough attention to, or do you mean the question of what is the purpose?
What's it all about,
What's
Alfie?
it all about?
Kind of, what's it for? Why?
Yeah.
And does it amount to anything? And is there anything besides what I can see, feel, touch, and hear? Or is there other meaning? deeper, higher.
Tim, what about you? I mean, I think you probably lived with this project for 3 years, right? Between writing it and finishing the edit and now doing press?
I think what was most difficult for me, and I have to be somewhat careful here, but, you know, a lot of the characters in the film and the experiences that characters have in the film are either versions of me or versions of people I know. And so in exploring that in sometimes a rather ruthless way, you know, I learned a lot about writing itself and what you owe to yourself and those around you when you mine your own experiences. And I think that's what I will most take away from this, because the situations in the movie, while each one of them is entirely my own, and in a sense none of them is my own, they're all very, very personal. And you know, there are no lies in this movie. I didn't put stuff in there that I didn't either experience directly myself or intimately secondhand experience. And figuring out how to build a narrative around that was responsible to me and those around me was a difficult and at times painful process.
Next question.
Hi, my question is for Tim. I'm wondering if you could explain the process you took with directing yourself, since you're acting and creating this movie, if it was challenging or if you think the movie was benefited, if it's a blessing, if it's, because not everyone has the fortune to do that, if you consider yourself lucky, did you like it, etc.
Yeah, I like that question. I originally wrote this role for my friend Michael Stuhlbarg, and he wasn't available to do it. I think he actually might have been doing Steve Jobs.
Which he's amazing in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, all right, this is the character feels close to me. He's a dad, and he's my age, Jewish, living in New York, raising kids, has a strong wife, which I do. And so I thought, not only is it great that I play him, but it's a chance for me to play somebody who doesn't have an accent, who isn't mentally deficient. Because
a regular guy.
Yeah, a regular guy. I often play such extreme characters as an actor, which is wonderful and lucky, and I wouldn't want it any other way. But there's been many a day when I've gone to the makeup chair with an hour or so in front of me to put on the facial hair and the tattoos and whatever it was that was called for with a particular character, that I've thought, my God, can't I just play a character where I can just be close to myself? I'd love to do that one day, and this afforded me that opportunity. The biggest challenge for me lies in the fact that as an actor, you really depend on your scene partners. And so often when I'm directing a scene and I want something out of actor A, I'll give a note to actor B so that the response that I'm trying to get from actor A isn't coming from my telling somebody what to do, but it's coming organically from actor A in response to what actor B did. It's great for the actor to find a moment that way, and most of all, it's best for the film because you get a real moment, and often you catch somebody being surprised and living in that moment on screen. Well, that goes out the window if I'm acting in a scene. Of course, if I'm actor B and Sam is actor A and I'm trying to get a response from him, I can just do something to change it, but then to get the response, but then I'm always scared that the actor is going to say to himself, what's he after here? Overthink it. He changed that because he wants me to be different. What is it that he wants? Because he's also the director. And so that
How
becomes
do you do
tricky.
that with yourself?
That's the other part. How do I do that with myself? And I don't believe in actors directing other actors. It's an absolute prohibition of mine. I do not allow it to happen. And so then what do I do when I'm in a scene with Sam and I need something from him for me? I don't know how to, I don't ask, because I feel like it's an actor asking another actor to do something different, and then I'm interfering with his process. And that's, it's not right, it's not
And plus, you
fair.
know you did it, too.
Yeah.
So that would foil its effect on you.
Exactly.
Right?
You have a director's baseball cap that you put on and start talking to him as the director, take the cap off?
I think the answer is to cast great actors around you. And it was so easy acting with Sam. I never felt the need to ask him to do anything different. There's such love in his eyes sitting opposite me that you'll see in the film. He plays my father. And I think that the other actors experienced that as well.
We benefited from being in a place that was a real place for both of us, too.
Yeah.
And I think that that's another thing about the New York that you photographed, was that its familiar nature. We're talking about the restaurant at Fairway on the Upper West Side. We both knew it from our own lives, and is reify? Is that where this word belongs? It makes real what we are doing without us paying any attention. It's like shooting Law and Order in New York. New York kind of insists on its presence insists itself upon you. And
forces itself on you as a character.
Yeah, and it affects you. And I think that scene was definitely affected by where we shot it.
Hi, Tim. In being an actor in other films and now directing this one, have you taken any other techniques from other directors and incorporated into this film?
Yeah, I mean, I take techniques from other directors and also other actors. It's funny, I was talking with one of my idols, Sean Penn, who's also a friend, and I was being a bit crafty with Sean, and I was talking to him about the environment that I try to have on my sets, and I was going on, as I was just doing, about how I want it to be the sort of set on which I would want to act, and I try to speak positively to the actors and not admonish them or give them tests, but on and on about what a wonderful, gentle, nurturing experience it is. And Sean, who's a fantastic director, he just said, "Oh, I'll just spit in an actor's face." And if I were an actor and Sean did that, it would probably, because he's Sean and just because he is who he is, and I have so much respect and love for him, it would evince the exact sort of response from me that he wanted, and that's right for him. That makes sense for him. And if he went all mamby-pamby the way I do on my sets, people would probably think that it didn't make any sense. And so
I have to interrupt. I don't think you give yourself credit for clarity, both clarity of thought and clarity of communication, which doesn't have anything to do with this kind of soft love.
Yeah,
It's
that's
to do
fair.
with really knowing where you are.
Yeah, I'm clear. And there was one actor on this set who looked up at me one day, and he wanted to throttle me because I was being so meticulous about the words. And so yeah, I can definitely I suppose, figuratively spit in an actor's face.
I feel like you could have told me
but-
that quote and not who said it, and I'd be like, oh, that's Sean Penn. That's Sean Penn.
But he's an incredible actor and an incredible director and a gift to the whole process of filmmaking. I mean, he's a national treasure.
He's an unsung director. He's a director that people don't talk about that much. I mean, The Indian Runner and The Crossing Guard are two, classic films that I feel like people don't really know about.
He's fantastic.
Guys, I have to let you go. I don't want to end it on talking about Sean Penn's movies. This film is fantastic. Congratulations. It's really beautiful. And I feel like we talked about how dense and sad it was, but it's also very moving and entertaining. Congratulations. It opens at IFC when?
Friday.
The 8th. Friday. Guys, thank you so much. Congratulations.
Thank you.